So you moved to Detroit in 2010, and do you identify as a Detroiter now?
Yeah, so I do actually. I believe that Detroit gave me like, I would say the grit, the tenacity to push on, and there's so many obstacles that pop up in our life. You know, there's trials, tribulations that we face, you know, on a day-to-day basis. You know, we might even be in a traffic jam. But I think that just understanding that if you push through and are persistent, I'm a very, you know, spiritual guy. I have a strong faith. And I realized that, you know, coming from Detroit, it's beautiful. It's a beauty in the struggle. In a sense of, I remember times taking the bus to school, and you see so many different walks of life, you know, on the D-Dot bus, the local transportation, and or just driving through Detroit. You would see some blocks with just one house and the rest might be abandoned. You know, it kind of gives you a sense of, you know, there's a reason I'm here, you know, and there's also a reason why I'm blessed in a sense. I don't live in this community per se, but you have to realize that this is still your community. And I remember that I always wanted to make a change. I always wanted to find a way to make that change. And I remember learning in high school that there are actually more abandoned houses than there are homeless people. And to me, that was striking me, because I was like, people can help. People can make change. People can put these displaced people into these homes. Like, what is the problem? I never really understood the dynamics of poverty and homelessness until maybe having to face it my own one day. So I remember the transition from Arizona to Michigan. As a kid, I was sheltered in a sense that my father didn't really share what was going on. You know, I was 12 years old, didn't really understand what it means to get evicted or to be homeless in a sense. But my father did a great job in parenting and keeping me protected. I remember coming home from school one day and seeing an eviction notice on the door. Me not really knowing what it meant, I'm like, okay, it's just something to tell my dad, not really thinking too much of it. Maybe he was a month late on the payment of the house, you know. But then as life transcended, I realized, like, no, there was an eviction. And moving forward, this kind of transcended how I got to Michigan. My father wanted me to spend the Christmas in Detroit with my brother and his girlfriend at the time, to have like a better Christmas, because, you know, he knew what was going on. We lost our house, and at the time I was living with one of my friends for about 2 to 3 months, not even knowing I was there for that long, until recent stories have progressed from that. But yeah, so my dad, we lost the house, and he decided to send me to Michigan for Christmas. We ended up not being able to go for Christmas because there was $100 unaccompanied minor fee. So I was like devastated. I was like, man, I wanted to go to Detroit so bad. But then we saw another plane ticket to come to Detroit for like December 31st. And I would land in Detroit at 9 o'clock. So I would be there right at the cusp of New Year's Eve. And so got on the plane, flew to Detroit, landed there with my brother picking me up, and we went to his place and ate some good food and watched the New Year's ball drop and played this game called Def Jam Rap Star, where you like read the lyrics on the screen, and it's like you're doing like karaoke pretty much.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool. I was a shy kid back then, but I remember opening up to my brother who I've met before, but not to this full extent, and his girlfriend. Life goes on. My father at the time was actually homeless, so he was living in his car. And so I remember looking back now, I realized he protected me in a sense of one of his hardest things in life he had to do was leave his kids behind. And he told me that. And so I remember, like, my father was answering the phone. I was like, what do I have to do? So my brother and his girlfriend enrolled me in school at Henry Ford Academy, School for Creative Studies, which to me was really cool because I loved art. But I still was kind of confused as a kid. And sometimes I used to write in my journal and say I was like a lost dog with no home, like a lost puppy. But yeah, so I enrolled in school, and like I said, as life goes on, my brother and his girlfriend broke up, but his girlfriend said she'd always take care of me. And
wow.
And in time, she adopted me, and she was 27, and I was like 12 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So to this day, that's who I recognize as my mom. Yeah.
Wow.
And so the shift from Germany to America when I was 5, I'll share with you, Jeff, and to the listeners. My mother was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and so she wasn't able to raise me at a young age because of her illness. And so this is the reason why I moved at such a young age from Germany to America. Yeah.
So your mother was German, or she was over there with you?
Yep,
Okay.
my mother was born in Germany, German background and descent. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And so, what help me understand the relationship with your brother. That you said you'd met him, but
Yeah. So my brother is about 15, 16 years older than me. And so at the time, I was probably living everywhere but Michigan for the most part of my life until I moved when I was 12. And so I remember him coming to Utah to visit me, him and my other brother coming to visit me in Utah. And then I remember one summer, I think I might have spent a couple summers in Detroit as a kid growing up. And I remember him meeting my brother and like us just having a relationship. But since we were pretty much out of state and out of touch for such a long time, it was just almost like a new meeting again, you know?
yeah.
A newer age, you know, you're older, you can understand more. It's just more vibrant. It's just kind of more a fresh start to an extent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the time, did you you said you didn't really understand what was going on with
Yeah,
your dad.
no, I didn't understand what was going on actually up until recently. So my father actually passed away July 27th, 2020. So up until that point, I had no idea the struggle my father was facing and the sense of him being homeless, trying to raise me. And I didn't really understand until he passed away, and I asked questions like, you know, what was my dad really going through? And he lost his 401k. Since he worked in overseas for over 20 years, he didn't really know like the taxes.
Right.
And so they garnished everything. They took his house, his car. I remember asking Dad, like, hey, Dad, what about the car? Like, why don't you just, like, where's the car at? You know, he kind of was like, oh, it's at our friend's house. You know, the tires are bald. You know, he didn't really say, like, the government took it from us.
He didn't want
to
tell you.
Tell me, yeah. But I think in the long run, it helped me because, you know, I knew what it was like to only wear a couple clothes throughout the week, or to have people at school kind of ask questions like, hey, why are you at Dylan's house for so long? Or, you know, why are you wearing the same stuff? You know, for me, but it kind of built like that character. It built a lot, you know, and it takes a lot to tear me down, I would say. But yeah, I think that it was a long journey and a good journey in a sense that like I gained so much empathy and understanding for just the human life. And that kind of is a way too. I remember being in school, still maintaining like satisfactory grades, like being on the dean's list, even though I was going through all these circumstances, but staying protected. In a sense, my father wasn't kind of sharing every detail with me. Yeah.
And, you know, it seems to me that that's not the norm to be on the dean's list when you're going through all that.
Yeah, so that we can even speak on the transition to Michigan. I remember writing in my journal. My adopted mother always wanted me to have a journal. So she saw that I came from a lot of trauma, not really realizing I did, but she saw how, you know, as an adult, you kind of see everything going on, you know. And so I was always journal. And I remember writing in my journal that I would graduate high school as a valedictorian with a 4.0. Not even knowing what valedictorian truly meant.
You heard it somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good thing.
Or thinking that I would get like a 4.0 GPA. But so, yeah, just speaking of that, I remember going into high school, realizing that this is be shocking to listeners. I actually didn't get my U.S. citizenship until 2018.
Really?
So I was in middle school and high school with no proof of my American citizenship. So I remember, like, okay, so my mom can't afford to pay for me to go to college. She didn't plan on having a kid right now, kind of just land from DTW. So I was like, okay, what can I do to go to college? I have to focus on school. And I realized that to do that, I have to get, like, the highest grades possible. So I remember I've always had an eagerness to learn. I love learning, just understanding new things. And I remember that my freshman year, I got a 4.0. And I was like, nothing less than an A.
Of high school?
Yeah, in high school.
Okay.
And so moving forward, I remember only getting, I think, 2 Bs in my life in high school. And those were like in AP courses. So it's still kind of like as an A-. But I graduated high school as valedictorian. And top of my class with like a 3.99 GPA.
Wow. And
so I remember like writing that down made such a big importance because it like didn't just hold me accountable, but it put that stuff out there into the universe for me to succeed. And I remember applying to like 22 colleges, getting into almost all of them, and then it was Michigan. I remember as a kid, my dad grew up in Detroit, and he'd always wear like Fab 5 Michigan stuff, Wolverine gear.
Yeah.
And I never really
What an
knew
era.
like why I was so right, exactly, what an era. Why I was so compelled to come to Michigan. I knew in high school I wanted to go to school for engineering. And I remember just my dad always wearing this Michigan blue stuff and Wolverines. I'm talking about Jalen Rose in the Fab Five.
Yeah.
And I love sports, but I wasn't really that good at basketball or football. I just, love sports and hang out with my friends. But so coming to University of Michigan, I was open with them. I remember on a job application, they asked me, what's the hardest decision you ever had to make? And for me, I lied on my application and said that I was a U.S. citizen.
Oh, wow.
And I knew I technically was.
On your university application?
Yeah, my university app.
Yeah.
But I said I was a U.S. citizen and I technically didn't have any proof. So I remember meeting with financial aid and kind of telling them hey, I actually am not a U.S. citizen. I don't have proof. So I remember I had to write I think it was unconventional, but I had to write 11 letters from people that were in my community, like my principal, people at my church, my mother, teachers, counselors, to kind of prove that my story was legit. Wow. In a sense of how I got to America. Yeah. And Michigan recognized me as a Daca student. So I was undocumented for 2 years in college, which I don't know any other college that would have just accepted me. And I remember when the president, Trump at the time, requested that every college share their DACA status. And I know Michigan didn't. And at that time I was spooked. I was like, man, I'm right here in college. It's my sophomore year. I'm just afraid that any time I might get I don't even know if they would have deported me back to Germany, but I remember that was a scary time. But yeah, I remember 2018 August I actually obtained my proof of my U.S. citizenship, and that was a really great time. And finally got my driver's license and everything, and got that was a great time.
That was a moment to feel proud to be a Michigan Wolverine, right? I mean,
definitely. I called my M card my golden ticket. Oh. That's what I called it. Yeah, that's the only form of ID I had is my M card.
Wow.
Yeah.
This clip came from a longer episode of the Why Not Me podcast. Find it on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.